I had some unfortunate things occur with one of my really close friends. I still feel like I had a role in her getting eliminated. I ended up finishing high school when I was 16. Along that time, I also received my autism diagnosis, and then I started my PhD in neuroscience when I was 18. I started to learn just a lot more about neuroscience broadly and just like what autism was. There's so much diversity. Nobody is the same. It would be boring if we were. One of the hard things when it comes to autism, everyone's goal is to care, but everyone cares differently.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Behind the Beast, where we get to know the contestants on Beast Game Season 2, Strong vs. Smart.
Hi, my name is Sammie Harker. I am player number 2, and in real life, I am finishing up my PhD in neuroscience.
All right, so tell us the origin story. How does like a teenager like yourself end up starting college earlier and then choosing neuroscience?
Yeah, so I feel like my origin story kind of started in middle school is usually where I start when I tell people about it. I grew up in the California school system, and a lot of the schools there will kind of just do this testing system where you can just keep testing out of different things.
Nice.
And so I had tested out of a couple years of math. And so when I entered my freshman year of high school, they had me and a couple other people taking Algebra 2. And once we started doing that, they also allowed us to enroll early in college classes. My freshman year of high school, I started taking college courses.
And are those like IPB, something like
that?
Yeah,
it was like IB school.
IB, there you go.
But they did have like a community college professor like come over and teach it.
Nice.
But what had happened was by the time I had finished my freshman year of high school, I had enough credits to be a senior in high school.
Nice.
And there was a new school that had opened up in the district at that time. And they gave me the opportunity to enroll full-time at college and then also finish the rest of high school online. And so I ended up doing that, but I found out this like little trick that they'll pay for those classes as long as it's under 12 credits. So I enrolled at like 3 different community colleges and I just kept getting free credits. And then those like supplemented my high school education. So then I ended up finishing high school when I was 16 and then having like a junior credit level. And then I got an acceptance to a really tiny school in St. Louis, Missouri called the St. Louis College of Pharmacy. And I ended up getting to do cross country and track there and then also just pursue academics. And I initially thought I wanted to do a PharmD degree, which is why I went there. And then while I was there, though, I started doing research. And so that started to become really interesting to me. And along that time, I also received my autism diagnosis. And so I started to learn just a lot more about neuroscience broadly and just like what autism was and found out that there wasn't a lot of resources over there. And so that made me really passionate about writing. And I ended up winning a scholarship from the Organization for Autism Research.
Nice.
And that was like a Inspiring Story Award scholarship. And so the one thing about my tiny little school in St. Louis is that they only had sciences degrees.
Oh, wow.
And so concurrently while I was doing all this, I was also working at Starbucks. I had to fund my education by myself. I didn't really have any support in doing that. But the really cool benefit of Starbucks is that they gave me a Starbucks College Achievement Plan scholarship. So I was able to get a free degree from ASU as well.
I love that.
And so I pursued a degree in English just because it was something I really enjoyed. And I just wanted to learn more. And so through that, I was also able to write articles for the Organization for Autism Research. And so that kind of started this whole trajectory of like me understanding what autism was and realizing that there wasn't a lot of support and then trying to go down that pathway of like creating more knowledge. And then I got connected through ASU to my current principal investigator that I work with who has a longitudinal study of older autistic adults. And we have one of the largest representations of autistic women in the world as well, which is really
amazing,
cool. And so all of that kind of just led into me being able to finish college early. And then I started my PhD in neuroscience when I was 18.
So like did all those like events, like learning about autism, that's like what led you to specifically want to go neuroscience path to kind of like accumulate all of your knowledge together in one path?
And so like one of my favorite experiences I got out of that was when I did receive my diagnosis and I realized that there wasn't a lot of support. My mom is actually a kindergarten teacher, and so she is kind of aware of like some of the neurodevelopmental support systems out there, but she found out about this program called PEERS, which stands for the Program for the Education and Enrichment of Relational Skills. And something that was really cool once I started my PhD was that my lab develops support programs for autistic adults. And so I was sort of pulled in as a collaborator to help write the first rendition of the peers program for autistic adults across the lifespan.
Oh, that's amazing.
Which was really cool to do. And so I think like just having those experiences of like being a past participant and then also just being really interested in producing more resources really pushed me to want to do neuroscience research and get more resources for older autistic people and then women in general.
You gave a TEDx talk at one point called I Do Look Autistic. So what's something that people after watching the video still do not understand that you really want to emphasize even further?
So one of my things I think is just kind of funny is after I gave that talk, I sent the link to my grandma, and I love my grandma. She's super sweet, but I think she said something along the lines after watching that of like, but you don't look autistic, you don't. And I think that that's kind of the thing I wish people understood more is just the diversity of autism. I forget who said the quote, but there's a saying that when you meet one autistic person, you meet one autistic person.
Yes,
and I think that that really does reign true just because there's so much diversity. And I think that that's just how humanity is as well, is that nobody is the same. It would be boring if we were. And I think it comes to be really hard with neurodivergent individuals specifically, just because it's this weird stereotype of not embracing them for who they are. And I've seen it too, where it's the kids that get thrown out of classrooms, the kids that are told that they're the problem are often neurodivergent kids. And it's really sad because it's not necessarily that they're acting out, but they need more support. And it's something that like a standardized school system may not be able to give them. And that's nobody's fault really. It's just a lack of resources. And so
and knowledge as well. Like even teachers sometimes don't realize what they're doing.
And I mean, a lot of people are identified late. And so some of the things I like to talk about too is like the history of the diagnosis as well, just specifically coming to autism. It wasn't even manualized until 1980. And so there's this whole generation of people that got missed. And so like in, the 1900s, people were probably hit and whatnot for acting out in class, but that they may not have been acting out. They could have just been having a reaction because they were overstimulated. And those adults have had to now cope and find out a way to function within society. And that can be really hard and emotionally jarring on a person. And I think I wish people understood that more and gave themselves more grace, because a lot of people are neurodivergent and they don't even know. And sometimes we even get people recruited into our study where they might have an autistic relative or they know somebody that's autistic and they want to learn more. And then they come into our study and they actually find out that they're autistic. And I think that that's kind of a cool way that just goes to show that so many people just don't know. And it's just like this whole different world, and it brings a lot of comfort to people once they do know that and they accept others for who they are too.
Now, being someone with autism and researching autism yourself, what are some of the advantages that this double role gives you in the lab?
So I think one of the biggest advantages is just like the insight of what it means to be autistic. One of my favorite people in the autism world is a woman named Temple Grandin. She was kind of like the first autistic woman to narrate her experiences of being an autistic person. And she had talked about how like in childhood, she was kind of nonverbal. She was told that she was never going to succeed. Her parents were advised to institutionalize her, and they didn't do any of that. And they like pushed her along this path of getting the appropriate resources. And she ended up getting her PhD in animal sciences. And through that, she used her own understanding of like the sensory experiences that she was having to develop like a machine that was like a hug machine that helped her feel more comfortable. And that then inspired her to develop like 2/3 of the United States ethical cattle slaughterhouses too, because she understood how the animals were seeing this like fear because they could see over like the sides of the chute. And I think things like that really stand out, at least for me in my role in research, is that I can kind of understand how the participants would feel because I've been an autistic participant myself. And I know what it feels like when you're not treated fairly or if you are treated very well. And so I feel like it helps me relate to the participants. It also makes them feel more comfortable. Because
you have that rapport with them.
They're talking to somebody who does understand. But I also think it's helpful because it allows me this position to also advocate for what I think is like right within research. And so I think that's especially important when it comes to autism and genetics research, because there's unfortunately a lot of malpractice
Sure.
historically there. And so I really like that I can be at the forefront of that and be in communication with other autistic people and use that to kind of inform the way that we do things. And it also feels validating too for me to be able to sort of create resources that younger me would have wished were there.
I love that. And now, so do you feel that other people in your field who are not autistic themselves or on the spectrum, like what are their reasonings usually for getting involved into this like research? Is it like family members or anything else?
Yeah, I think in general, people really care. I think that's one of the hard things when it comes to autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions is that I don't really know of anyone who doesn't care.
Sure.
I think everyone's goal is to care, but everyone cares differently.
Sure.
And I think that that can be hard when it comes to some people see it as a thing of like they want it to be cured, and some people want it where they want resources, they want to be embraced, and nobody has the same perspective, but it's all grounded in the same thing that we want to help. And so I think in general, people that are not neurodivergent come into the field sometimes because they know somebody who is autistic and it really push them towards wanting to help. That's something they're very passionate about, or in general, they just want to help. But I think in the same regard, it becomes hard because you can't help everyone and you can't please everyone's perspective. And so I think that it's also sort of created this animosity between autistic and neurodivergent people in general, and also researchers. And I've experienced that too. I've had autistic people come to me and be frustrated with me. And I think that that's just something that really speaks to how hard it is to create science and do it in a way that really honors everyone, because you just can't, unfortunately.
And like you said, like if you meet one autistic person, you meet one autistic person. So there's no cure or any like help or resources for every single person. And like you said, everyone wants something different.
Yeah, everyone has something different, and it's really hard too in terms of just the way that we've been pushing towards different like identity language in autism. So some people really advocate for like identity first, so saying autistic person versus person with autism. And so some people prefer it one way or the other. Some people don't have any preference. Some people don't like different like functioning labels, and that's something that's been removed. Some people do like the functioning labels because it helps get support. And so it's really hard because of that diversity to develop very specific support and very specific like labels per se to get people what they would need sometimes.
So now you won multiple fellowships and early career awards. So how did those change what you could pursue, and how did it feel whenever you first received them?
Yeah, so the one that I think will always just ring true in my heart is like the most meaningful to me is one called the Quad Fellowship. I had the honor of being in the first cohort of the Quad Fellowship, and it's since changed like guiding groups. It used to be with Schmidt Futures, now it's with the International Institute of Education. But I think it was just such a great opportunity because they brought 100 people from different countries around the world together, and we still have that network. I still meet up with Quad Fellows to this day, and I think that that's really awesome. And we all had the opportunity to go to Melbourne, Australia, and experience this like amazing conference experience and learn from scientists and each other. And I just felt like that was something that was so amazing, and that was right at the start of my graduate career. And I felt like that fellowship really made me feel like I could do whatever I put my mind to. And that was like the first big thing I ever won. And it still means so much to me that they saw something in me, and they saw that I could try to make a difference for autistic people. And I think that that not only set me up to apply for other things, but also try to create better resources and seek out other tools and other people's perspectives that I otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that that like cross-cultural collaboration is also really beneficial because a lot of different cultures perceive neurodiversity and disabilities differently. And that was something that I got to see firsthand, was all these people from these different countries' perspectives on that. And I think it's really cool that I have all those people to talk to. And I also feel like that fellowship, the way I found out I won that one was also kind of funny. I was coming home from a neuroscience conference, and I was in the car with 2 other people, and we were following the Siri navigation, and it took us on this like weird back road thing, and we ended up getting pulled over by a cop. And we were traveling from San Diego to Arizona,
Mhm.
and I guess they thought we were doing something that we shouldn't have. But Siri like navigated us down a bad road that we shouldn't have been on,
Okay. Yeah.
and they had to have like a dog search the car and all these crazy things. And so we were all pretty like shaken up after
Yeah.
that. And then 10 minutes later, I got a call from the White House that I won that
That's
fellowship.
crazy.
And I was like, yeah, I totally just did get pulled over by a
Yeah.
cop. But I thought it was just like such a weird experience. But yeah, I think that was my favorite one. And then semi recently, I also was super fortunate and got selected for the Chick-fil-A Community Scholarship.
Nice. Okay.
And I really, really love this one because everyone that's in it is doing such different things, but they're all trying to help their own communities.
Nice.
And I think that that's really beautiful. And so they brought together like 12 people that are Chick-fil-A employees and then 12 people that are just community members trying to advocate for their various networks of people. And I think it's really amazing to see like some of these people are high schoolers. And
Nice, yeah.
like there's one girl I can think of, and she made like this huge program for students that have incarcerated parents. And I think it's just so fantastic that like huge organizations can see the work that such young people are doing and give them the ability to pursue that in education, and then also through like a leadership mentorship program help them facilitate those skills and then strengthen those programs. And I think that that's awesome that they have faith in us to do that.
As an autistic person in very competitive spaces, whether that's academia or fitness, TV, how do you actually manage sensory overload and also like societal expectations in there?
Yeah, I think it can be very hard. I've definitely had some experiences where I felt overstimulated. I think for me personally, I did get support through a psychiatrist, and that's definitely helped me manage like those anxiety spells. But I think, you know, the stress of those scenarios can definitely be a lot. I can remember back to the TV show. I had some unfortunate things occur with one of my really close friends. And I still feel like I had a role in her getting eliminated. And that was really hard on me in the moment, and still is now. And I remember just crying because I just felt so upset at myself because I felt like the memory challenge was something I was supposed to be good at. And I remember they asked me on the cameras, they were like, is this something you're going to be even better at because you memorized so many digits of pi? And I was like, I think it's kind of a different type of memory. I don't know. And just like the cortisol is so high and you're just so stressed out. And I remember being towards the front too, and it was like shakier over there. And I also don't like heights, and that like freaked me out.
And you also can't see people ahead of you while other people got to see you.
And I think it was just so hard. And I just tried to do those like techniques that they teach you in therapy, like just like patting your shoulders and you're just like trying to calm down. But I think at the end of the day, there's only what you can and you can't do, and you can only control so much. And I think that that was just something that I tried to help. And I know my intentions were pure and they were good. And I think that that's what I try to tell myself is like, if I am overwhelmed right now, like why am I feeling like that and what caused that, and just try to like reason through it logically. And at least for me, I feel like that really helps. But I know for some people it's like they need that time and that space. They need to be in like their safe environment. And I think that all those tools can be really helpful. But I think it can be really hard when you're in those like fast-paced environments and you have those expectations on you.
Earlier, we talked about that some people want to try to cure autism, but where do you draw the line between trying to fix the condition versus trying to find more resources and accommodations?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, such like a multifaceted answer, because once again, like everyone is so different and it's so hard to know like what people want. Because me, myself, as an autistic person, I personally don't want like a fix necessarily. I just want people to support and embrace because I feel like I can thrive. But I know that that's not the same experience for some other people. I've mentored students who are autistic, and I remember one who specifically told me like, I want to cure autism. I don't want this. Like this is a very hard part of my life, and I don't like this part of myself. And that is a very true experience for a lot of people. And I think the other hard thing in the autism world too is that a lot of the voices that we're hearing are from people that do have a voice and not necessarily nonverbal people who aren't included in research as much and who aren't really at the forefront of their opinions being heard. And so I think everyone has these like divergent experiences. But I think ultimately, like, autism has survived evolution.
Yeah.
And I like to think about that. Like, it is here. And for me, at least, I feel like that's a reason to say, like, there's so many amazing things that autistic people have done.
Yes.
And there's also so many amazing things that autistic people can do when they are supported within their communities.
Yeah.
And I think about like patient zero. His name is Donald Gray Triplet. He was the like first person diagnosed by Leo Kanner, who is the scientist that was credited with developing autism, even though it was documented much earlier than that.
Sure.
But Donald Gray Triplet initially was institutionalized, and his parents like wrote so many letters to Leo Kanner, like asking him, please, like, help our son. And once Donald Gray Triplet was identified as autistic, his community really showed up and they supported him. He had a job as a bank teller. He learned a lot of different languages. He would travel around the world by himself. He joined a cappella groups. Like, those things that people can do once they're given those support systems, they can thrive. And I think that that's something that's really important to consider, is that like life does have value. And regardless of like if you feel that hardship because you are suffering, like there are people that love you and there are people that care about you. And I think that that's the most important thing to consider, is like when people are wanting a cure, like people are entitled to their own experiences and their own opinions when it comes to it. But I think at the end of the day, like, there are so many examples of people having those things and being able to really enjoy their lives.
Yes,
and I think that that is the most important thing to consider. All right. I know I was supposed to be good at memorizing the blocks, but since I didn't do that, I'm going to try to redeem myself by reciting some pi digits. 3.14159265358967932384627950288419716939993 75105820974944592 307-816-406-286-208-998-680 348-253-42117-067 982-148-086-513-282 306-647-093-8446095 505 8223-172-535-940 812-848-11174. And that's 150 digits.
That's absolutely wild. Congrats.
Thank you.
You like to compete in running heats for Orange Theory. So how does keeping an active lifestyle help you manage the stress and structure that you have to go through in research?
Yeah, I think fitness is amazing. From a neuroscience perspective, like working out, staying fit is really amazing in terms of helping yourself not develop conditions as you age. I also think it's just so important to have that balance and that like outlet. I know some people will say like, no matter what, I'm working out 1 hour a day. And I think that that's really good, having that protected time. I've seen reports that like 90% of graduate students are depressed, and I've experienced it. I could say that that's probably true. And I think that fitness is something that's just awesome to not only take care of yourself, but also to try to get that stress out. And for me, I feel like it's really helped me with my mindset too when it comes to just like doing work and staying consistent with tasks, is that like when you go do something as a routine and you stay consistent with it, it makes your mindset as though you can do things and you can stick at it for a while. This past weekend, I ran a marathon with one of my really close friends, and that was something I never thought I was going to be able to do in my life. I had a knee injury that really affected me for a while, and when I started graduate school is when I finally started to like actually get back into it and work out again. And I think like just running the marathon really put my mindset in like, I can do these hard things. Like I can stick with it. And I think just showing yourself like physically that you can do it, it almost feels like the physical is harder than the mental. And I feel like that can really keep you going if you're having a hard time.
I will also say, I think she's underplaying it a little bit. Sammie is a badass because she keeps posting on her story that she keeps getting first place in every race she basically does, which is insane. So
Thank you.
Props to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
What's one stereotype with autism that you still find the most annoying to hear today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the most annoying stereotype to me is that it's like a boy's condition. And so when I was trying to get diagnosed, I did have a female doctor, and I remember her saying to my mom, like, no, she's just awkward. She's just very awkward. Like,
Mm.
that's all it is. Like, girls aren't autistic. And I remember the psychiatrist too was like, I've never diagnosed autistic women before.
Really? Wow.
And it's very apparent just because, like, from a research standpoint, for studies that don't include intellectual disability, I think the ratio is like 4.2 to 1, that there's like 4.2 males for every female that's included.
Sure.
And then I think for those that do include intellectual disability, I think it's closer to like 3 to 1. And I think it's very hard for autistic women specifically because, like, sometimes their diagnosis isn't really seen as like valid, and
Sure.
I think the hardship that comes with that is the diagnostic criteria was based on like young boys, and that's just kind of like what was available then. And I think that autism can be very distinct based off of like if you're looking at females or males, and I think the stereotype that comes with that is that there is like a communication impediment. And I think that a lot of autistic people can communicate very well. It just might be hard to read like very small nuances.
Sure.
And I feel like with the proper support programs, you can get better at that. Like, I feel like the peers program that I did really helped me with that. And I think it can just be a little exhausting of like if you can engage in social conversations and being told like, no, you aren't autistic or you don't look autistic. And I think for women especially, it can make it harder for them to be diagnosed because that is a core facet of the condition is those symptoms. But in research, we call that like masking or camouflaging, which is something that autistic women are good at, is like adapting to their environments and sort of fitting in. And so I think that not only can make them not get diagnosed, but also make it harder internally of like people don't see like my diagnosis as valid potentially.
Gotcha.
And I think that can be kind of a frustrating stereotype.
So now 5 years from now, what do you want people to say about you, about how you changed how people view and talk about neurodiversity?
Yeah, I think I want it to be something about how I have helped people make that transition from like research to clinic. So something I'm doing right now is I'm actually applying to genetic counseling school. And that was a passion I kind of like developed a little late. I actually had a really hard experience happen in my, I think it was during my first year of graduate school. Something I do on the side is I mentor and tutor pediatric cancer patients.
Nice.
And I had worked with this one student and we really bonded. The student was also autistic and was kind of struggling with that isolation. And the student also happened to be adopted. And that was something that made it really hard for them because they didn't really know much about like their cancer history. And I remember them telling me one day that their cancer was terminal, and they wanted to keep meeting with me until the day that they passed away. And right before the student did pass away, they said, like, I wish there was some way I could have known about my cancer earlier. Like, I really wish there was some technology to do things like that. And that kind of helped me stumble upon genetic counseling. It's a field where you can do that. You can sort of figure out like the family history and help people with those tools. And I think that historically genetics has been misused as a tool for exclusion for autistic people. And so that's kind of what I hope people see in the future, is that I can be both like a provider and somebody that produces that research that affirms people's identities and creates those tools where autistic people see genetics as something that can help them and can help them embrace who they are and get the tools that they need to thrive.
That. Yeah. All right, and to finish things off, we have some rapid fire questions. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. What's your favorite pre-race song?
I really like Concede by Clay J.
Love that. What is your favorite research subject that you've worked on?
I've worked on psychedelics in mice.
Oh, interesting. Okay, we can leave it at that. But, okay. What sensory experience instantly calms you?
I really enjoy just putting some headphones in, listening to music, and that really calms me.
That's a classic one, honestly. Yeah. Cool. What's something your neurodivergence makes you amazing at?
I feel like being really understanding of other people's situations and just like helping accept them as they are.
I love that. Cool. And then what do you want people to remember when seeing you on Beast Games?
That I tried my best and I didn't do anything intentionally.
Sure. Well, cool. Well, Sammie, thank you again for taking the time to talk to me today. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Behind the Beasts. Thank you for watching another episode of Behind the Beasts. Now, I do want to be very respectful of the disability communities that we talk about in these videos. So 100% of the profits of this video are going to be going towards Major Connections, which is also the main fundraiser of this entire series.
Now, Major Connections is an organization created by Gloria, one of the other contestants on the show. And its purpose is to provide resources as well as a sense of community for those with disabilities, both kids and adults in rural areas. To learn more about Major Connections, check out the link in the description. If you have the financial means to do so, please provide any support that you can. And if you can't at this moment, please share with your friends and your family. But until then, thank you for joining for another episode of Behind the Beasts, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.